That the therapist's goal is not to get them out of CrossFit. The big thing in our relationship is we're going to keep them in here. We're going to find ways to keep them in here. And I hate to use, I always say modify before delete. So modify before delete. What can I do? They can't do that exercise. I can give them a couple different drills or modifications of that specific movement that I want them to stay away from. Okay, maybe you're not ready for kippy pull-ups, so we can at least do pull-ups.
All right, guys, welcome back to Jerk Block Talk. I'm Jason Fernandez here with Jake McCrowell, owner of Direct Performance Physical Therapy.
Yeah.
How long have you been a doctor of physical therapy?
For almost 8 years now, 8 years,
okay,
actually.
Cool, 8 years. So no stranger to that, and also no stranger to CrossFit.
Been doing it for a while and been training for a while.
Cool, so here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a couple different things. We're going to hit both coaches and gym owners. A couple things that I want to kind of reference with our relationship with Jake, because Jake treats a lot of our athletes, a lot of our weightlifters, and the value of having a good practitioner or good relationship with a professional practitioner, and then a little bit about like where coaches go wrong and not kind of staying in their swim lane with regard to just functionality for their athletes.
And where therapists go wrong, conversely, by just trying to bite off too much from a training standpoint.
Cool. Yeah, I think, and I think what's made our relationship very beneficial is that we respect where Jake's coming from, and we let him do the professional stuff, but we also like working with him because he understands the movement. Like, he comes in here and he'll occasionally lift with our lifters, and I think that's important when you get into a relationship with a practitioner, is that they understand what it is that you're doing so that they can get athletes where they want to go.
100%, yeah, it's a big component of it.
So can you talk a little bit about, you and I have had this conversation several times, but a little bit about like what you perceive to be the value, because I think it's important for people to know what they perceive the value to be of having the relationship like with a gym or a coach from a physical therapist standpoint.
I think it's paramount. I think there's several components to it. I think the first one is the trust that you have, and I think it's trust on your part to me. I think that what the coach and the owner needs to understand with the relationship with whichever therapist it is that the therapist's goal is not to get them out of CrossFit. The big thing in our relationship is we're going to keep them in here. We're going to find ways to keep them in here. And I hate to use, I always say modify before delete. So modify before delete. What can I do? They can't do that exercise. I can give them a couple different drills or modifications of that specific movement that I want them to stay away from. Okay, maybe you're not ready for kippy pull-ups, so we can at least do pull-ups. Would be the absolute most simplistic thing. But.
And from my standpoint, from a gym owner standpoint, like, people get banged up, whether they get banged up in the gym or they get banged up outside of the gym. If you've been in the game long enough, you're going to deal with both scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, statistically, anyone's going to get injured after a certain amount of years of pursuing a certain higher level of functional fitness.
Yeah, and if you guys have attended level 1, it's one of the things we talk about with like how you evaluate any program. If it is a high degree of efficacy, there's some degree of risk within that program.
Yeah.
So what's been huge for us is we've had some people that have come in and had injuries outside, pre-existing injuries, people that get dings, bumps when they're in here because they're trying to push the limits a little bit. What our relationship has allowed us to do is keep those people in the gym. We modify the protocol a little bit. I'll have a conversation with Jake and say, hey, like, what can I and can I not do with this athlete? And if he says they're not to squat below parallel, we don't squat below parallel. I don't really argue with him on those things because I kind of know my role in that scenario, and my goal is to do what's best for the athlete. And if the doctor tells me that that's what needs to happen, and I trust the doctor because he knows what we're doing, that's the protocol that we'll put in place.
Yeah, and hopefully through this conversation, we can get more coaches aware that they need to learn to potentially trust and be comfortable with that. And now that said, I think it's tough to have a certain amount of trust, and I think that's earned. So I think that's come from not just my years of my clinical skills, but I think just the relationships we've made in the box and the relationships we've made with the athletes themselves.
Yeah, I think it's huge, particularly and I've just referenced our relationship. If you are trying to get a relationship with a PT or something like that, they need to come in the gym. Athletes need to see them come in and get work. Because even if that person is not familiar with CrossFit, it's just hey, come in, learn what we do, see how it is 100%. That we do things so that you have a better frame of reference for how you can add value. Because we win because anytime we have that, people are like, hey, my shoulder hurts. And I'm like, cool, we've got a guy who's a professional, go see him and he can tell you exactly what that dysfunction is. And then when I send those athletes to Jake, it's usually with the heads up. I just send an email beforehand hey, you got somebody coming, here's the deal, here's what I see, and then I'm done at that point.
Yeah.
So I think that's been really, really beneficial for me, for the athletes, for everybody.
Yeah, for the patient coming in to see us. And I think for the therapist, it works both ways. So if a therapist is watching this, you need to go into your CrossFit community. If this is the type of clientele you feel that you have the experience and the technique to treat. We came in here. We were doing screens, individual screens on athletes, and looking at and we did mobility seminars several times and group seminars. So we found several opportunities, and it's very fortunate that you're able to open that avenue to us. But I think it's important for the therapists out there to really, overly find ways of connecting with the box. And it's not as simple as coming in and say, oh, I have these letters behind my name, and I'm a doctor, and I've done this and that. And that's all well and good, but you build rapport by being in there and really putting your hands on people, doing that in an individual or group aspect. So I think it's important for therapists to be able to go out there and do that and continue growth and relationship that will be built from that.
And I think, the premise of this, and we'll move on to the next piece, is, there's no secret, I've been doing this long enough, there's somewhat of a rift between the ortho, the PT community, and the CrossFit community, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. And my experience, and having kind of gotten over myself in a lot of those scenarios, is there's a lack of knowledge on both ends of the spectrum about where they can help us and what it is that we're actually doing in the gym.
100%, yeah. It's a really exciting time in the rehab world and in the fitness world. It's also a really scary time because there's where people are taking courses and just maybe becoming their own, in their eyes, experts. And the rehab world is getting more comfortable with the fitness community, and the fitness community is getting better at understanding movement. And when they understand movement, they start thinking that they can fix movement, and then they can think that they can analyze and assess it and break it down into small components and start treating people and diagnosing people. So I think it's scary with that but at the same time, it's good that they're learning movement, and they had to have a better capacity of understanding movement than they did before.
Yeah. And so let's shift gears here a little bit. Let's kind of go into where you're going. So, I think everybody, whether you like Kelly Starrett or not, what he brought into the community, awareness, everything, huge game changer. Just getting people to understand that there are basic dysfunction that you can fix yourself and at least manage to some degree is awesome. Where I think that has led some people astray is not understanding their scope of practice.
Sure, yeah. Kelly Starrett is what he's done for, I think, for our profession. I mean, I have so much respect for him to be able to show that physical therapists should be the leaders in the rehab in regard to taking care of treating these athletes, and that the community feels comfortable thinking that physical therapy is first compared to other potential healthcare providers. And I want people to think about seeing a therapist to fix the cause and understanding the movement and get a diagnosis, actual anatomical or pathological diagnosis, instead of maybe going and seeing a surgeon and talk about that. So I love what he's done for our field, and I love, Supple Leopard's a great book, but now we have someone who opens a page and goes, oh, there's my pain, I'll do this exercise, this X equals Y, and I'll always do this, and that's why I saw on that one page, and we didn't put the entire process together.
And so I see this a lot in specifically level 1 and then level 2, where we're working with athletes and new coaches, and they'll see something, and we're talking about, we'll talk about a fault in a movement, and I'll say, hey, okay, so what do we see here? And really what I'm asking is like, what is the fault that we're seeing? Not the root issue of like whatever. And a lot of people are just like, oh, he's got tight ankles or his hamstrings are short. And admittedly, guys, like I was this guy years ago, so I watched all the mobility WOD, and I'm just like, I'm a doctor.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's not that simple.
So one thing I've really kind of been trying to mentor some coaches on is you're not a doctor. Understand your scope of practice and what you can and can't do and what you know and what you don't know. So just looking at somebody who can't touch their toes doesn't mean that they have tight hamstrings.
Sure.
Like that for you to just say that just with no other pieces of information, what it's actually doing is exposing your lack of knowledge and your lack of professionalism.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a big difference. The word we would use is screen for success. I want our coaches and I want the community, I want them to be able to screen. And again, we're hitting on this before, but you guys are getting so much better at catching things. And I just want you to be able to basically put in a category, functional, dysfunctional. And if it's painful, we definitely need to take care of it. So, but we take a screen and we see something that looks dysfunctional, doesn't look like the way it's supposed to be moving, and we have our parameters of that, and then we immediately say, well, they're not doing that because of this. And that gets really dangerous because there's several things that that's potentially wrong. Yeah. Even more likely wrong.
Yeah, very, very high likelihood of you being wrong.
Yeah, so you're talking about toe touch. I'll draw something up here real quick. So if I have an athlete come in, we use a toe touch as one of our movement screens. And I love doing this. In fact, I've done it when we did a group seminar. We had people reach towards their toes, and then I purposely do everything besides stretch their hamstrings and watch their movement improve. I've had athletes where I've improved their deadlift PR by 150, almost 200 pounds by just correcting their toe touch and how that carries over to the functional movement. But without stretching their hamstrings.
Yeah.
So this, again, hopefully you can bear with how terrible of a drawer I am here, but if I have someone reaching towards their toes, we get our pelvis here, feet, hands, hopefully it's coming through. There's several components that are involved with the toe touch. I mean, we're looking for a uniform curve, so I want a coach to be able to say, is X touching X. Yeah. Is that happening? And is it looking relatively uniform to a certain degree? So I'm excited that people are being able to potentially screen this. Now, if we look at this, we have stability issues here. We have a posterior chain tissue extensibility issue here. We have it here as well. We have hip flexor mobility that we have to take into consideration. We have to take in the overall posture and alignment of the pelvis and the low back. We have to take in how the lumbar spine flexes. We have this. And then we have the thoracic spine, and so on and so on. So we have several components that are involved, or several potential deficits that could lead to you not touching your toes. And again, we're concerned that touching your toes is a fundamental motion that carries over to several functional activities. It requires a hip hinge. Yeah. So we see this, a lot of things, and then maybe they do have a tight hamstring. Let's say that is one of the issues. It's not moving the way they want to. Well, it probably could be coming from above and below the chain. So even if they potentially guess it right, it is a guess, and we want people to have better than a guess. So I draw this picture a lot for my athletes when they come in, and I want them to understand, the amount of components, but also when we're assessing, we're breaking this down into several components, and loaded, unloaded, symmetrical, asymmetrical. We're looking at different loaded positions to accurately assess all the components and how they interact with each other. And we can kind of start putting that together.
Cool. So as far as kind of giving people some guidance moving forward, because a lot of things that we like to do here is actionable things moving forward.
Yeah.
What about, do you recommend coaches seek out and take stuff and get familiar with FMS trainer, go get that qualification, or again, is that something that you have reservations about?
I don't. If it ends with the word screen, I want people doing it.
Yeah.
If it ends with assessment, you probably are not even allowed to take the course.
Okay.
I don't want people diagnosing. I want people assessing. I want people to screen things and catch them out and see if the athlete's at an increased risk of getting injured.
Yeah.
If they find those things, I think it's okay to provide a certain amount of corrective exercises, but at the same time, it needs to be connected with a therapist at that point. A light should be turned on and going, this person's not moving right. I want to take them to a movement expert. So, who's going to help them find the best source of their pain and really find the best correction of movement? At that point, if they do find and screen something, I think it's important for the coaches to understand. We take athletes through a systematic process and a sequential process of how we treat them.
Yeah.
So they come in and we're going to assess this and we'll find their restrictions and limitations, but then I'm going to spend time facilitating that.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to spend that, let's say it is the lumbar spine instead of the hamstrings. I'm going to spend time facilitating that to move more efficiently or to teach the body to stop guarding and protecting and resetting systems. And then we're integrating it into the rest of the movement.
Yeah, and I think and this is me speaking as a trainer, and where I've gotten this wrong, and where I think a lot of newer trainers who are really starting to dive into this stuff wrong, is not understanding the full picture of the human body and how it works. And I think what Jake's alluding to is, like, you might do a screen to say that somebody can't touch their toes, but the conclusion that you, or the corrective exercises that you might be giving an athlete might be step 4 in a 5-step process.
Bingo.
You skipped 1 through 3, and step 4 is only a Band-Aid for something that could be a permanent fix had we done things in the right sequence.
Absolutely.
So that's where I think it's valuable to seek out people who know what's going on, because you're going to become a better coach because you're educating yourself about, like, where is my scope of practice, where am I limited in my knowledge, and stuff like that. And then you can have somebody like Jake or whoever it is that you work with give you a little bit better roadmap to do better screens,
100%.
and then understand, like, I now understand where my clear path or my clear kind of line in the sand for that handoff needs to be. And you say, hey, listen, once you get to this point, that needs to be a handoff to a professional.
100%. Yeah, and that's very well said. And I want the coaches to be able to. I want them to be excited about movement, because they're spending so much time coaching it, and if they're not comfortable assessing movement, they're not going to be able to assess it when the person's actually moving through their functional patterns.
Yeah.
But conversely, I think it's the coach's goal is, can I catch something and know when to catch it? If you can catch something early, or even a little bit later before it becomes injury, a lot of times you go, man, I'm glad you sent this to me now, because a month from now, this would end up being a tear.
Yeah.
Or 2 months, or whatever it was. And we got this, I'm glad you caught it now, because I was able to fix it so quickly that this person is not going to skip a beat.
Yeah. And even in other scenarios, like, we've had athletes who did need to have surgery. But that was a long-term thing where, like, we went back and forth, and we're like, we don't know, we can't figure it out. And finally, I think you and I were both comfortable handing that athlete off and be like, we agree you need to have surgery.
100%,
Where that person might have just been like, they might have been okay to just get some actual care from a good PT and not, because there are a lot of people, realistically, they get cut on that don't need to be cut on.
Oh, that's a whole nother class that I can, another soapbox. That we overdiagnose and we over-image people, and we just give MRIs to scare people. And one of the best surgeons, Dr. Andrews, he did Manning's neck and shoulders and all these things. He's like, if I want to do surgery, I just do an MRI. So it's so easy for a doctor to find a justification to cut into you. But what we're seeing with the research is, we're getting better short-term and long-term goals without cutting into them. We're saving them a ton of money, but we're going to get faster and more efficient goals by fixing the cause of it. But I think it's important for people to stay in their lane. For us, it's I think people get too comfortable trying to find those exercises. Again, I don't want to belabor the point, but it has to be a systematic process of fixing people, and the same way we train them. And if we don't take that methodological approach into consideration, we're being short-sighted. So there's a lot of just everyone wants to be the next Kelly Starrett.
Yeah.
I think so. And
I get it.
because he's so great, but like I think we're missing the bone. I don't want to be the next Fern. I don't want to be the next coach.
Yeah.
That's not my lane either.
And I think that's a perfect, and I'll kind of wrap this up for you guys. And the point of doing this episode with Jake is this. Your job as a CrossFit coach is to get people to teach them and to correct their movement, to get them to move as well as humanly possible.
Right.
So in doing that, don't be so naive to think you have all of the answers, and understand that in many scenarios, you're one of many pieces of that puzzle that need to be put together correctly in order to get the athlete to the right spot. And if you think anything that you have more opportunity than that, or a bigger scope than that, I think that's problematic in a lot of scenarios.
I think so. I think it's going to, it's easy to tell someone to not be, to be humble. But I think you're going to have so much more rapport with. And it's not even making it about you. I think that can get kind of. I don't know, it can get personal or however you want to say it, but
I think I know where you're going with this. Where like if again here in our gym, like for me, that's an easy handoff. They're like, hey, I have a thing, and I'm like, cool. We have a relationship with a doctor who's treated many of our athletes for a wide variety of things. Like I'm absolutely fully comfortable sending you to this guy because he understands what we do. He's here all the time, and he's got a good track record with us.
Yeah. And now that person is going to be confident coming back to the gym, because at the end of the day, some people are going to be nervous. I don't want to get injured doing this. It's high intensity, or I don't want to get injured, or I'm having pain. Maybe I'll just put my membership on hold, or I'll try to convince them of that. No, I want that person to stay in the gym and be motivated, and I want them to feel comfortable getting back into it.
That's a great point, because we've owned our facility for 7+ years.
People are choosing Rife for many reasons, but one of them is you guys know your lane, and you can say, people feel confident that they're not going to be overly worked and pushed to the injury, and they feel that they know that they can come back and be in a safe environment.
Well, I think it's important is that when we send people there, like Jake's, and a lot of physical therapists would be like, no, you shouldn't do that stuff anymore. Where Jake's going to be, no, he's like, you can continue to work out, but here's your left and right lateral limits when you do work out. And then he and I will have a conversation, so that way they're hearing the same story from both the therapist and the coach. And again, it's all about the athlete. So in my mind at this point, you're foolish to not have a relationship with a practitioner, because again, it's just more added value for your clients, and it's all about getting the athletes into the best possible position so they can move better, so they can get more fitness and all this stuff moving forward. So the point here is, if you do not have a relationship with a physical therapist, you need to try to seek one out, and you may not have one who's well-versed in CrossFit. And here's what I'm going to tell you. They're probably going to be resistant to doing that, but pull them into the gym. Have them come in, show them what it is that you do, show them how you coach, because they're probably not coming in because they have reservations that CrossFit coaches don't coach, and it's all about intensity. But if they walk into your gym and they see that you're running people through a systematic warm-up and you're teaching them movements, and that you're just like every other coach in the world who's just dealing with people who have dysfunction, and you're doing the best you can, and you're limited with your knowledge, they'll be more than willing to hop in and help you out with that stuff.
Yeah, so. At 100%. Yeah, well said.
Cool. Social media stuff, where can people find you guys?
Yeah, so we're at Direct Performance PT, or I guess at Direct Performance PT for Instagram, and directperformancept.com is our website, so you can get all of our information or about our services and everything, schedule appointments, anything like that about us.
And then you guys have 2 offices currently?
Yeah, 2 offices on both in Virginia Beach. We have one on West Great Neck, or near Great Neck and Shore Drive, and then we have another one on Rosemount right off the 264 exit.
Cool. Yeah. So if you guys have questions for Jake or for me about anything we've talked about, please put that stuff in the comments. We'll be sure to put you guys in contact.
Yeah,
we'll put all Jake's social media handles up here and make sure that stuff's on there. But if you guys like the content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.